Everyone, good morning. If I may interrupt you, we will begin this meeting. My name is Robin Gomez. I'm the Madera Beach City Manager. By show of hands, how many of you, is this your first time in this room, this building? Well, please come back again. This building is for all of you, and we are here to provide the best possible municipal services that the City of Madera Beach staff can provide. So please come back. This is where all the magic happens. You will be entertained when you come to meetings here. So please feel free to come back anytime. Again, I'm Robin Gomez, Madera Beach City Manager. I started here December of 2021. I live about 7 blocks down the street here. I love living here in Madera Beach, despite what some residents may have said. This is my home. I love it here. My commute this morning was walking on the sand, so can't beat that commute to walk here. And I do that pretty regularly. So it is high tide almost. It's very windy. No tents this morning. No glass, no dogs on the sand. Wait, wrong crowd. Sorry about that. And up here in front of you, the speakers that you will hear from today, there will be 2 presentations, one by the county, one by City of Madera Beach staff. We have Linda Fisher, Principal Planner with Forward Pinellas, Jenny Rowan, our Community Development Director, Marcy Forbes, our Community Development Engineer, and Andrew Morris, our Community Development Long Range Planner. I also would like to point out we have some members of our City Commission here, Jim Rostek, our Mayor, in the back, Eddie McGeehan, Commissioner Eddie McGeehan, Commissioner Anne Marie Brooks, and I think Commissioner Taglarini's on vacation, and Joe is one of our newest employees here in the back, your host, just started I think Monday, right? So welcome to Community Development Planning Review Technician. We also have and Lisa, forgot Lisa, where'd she go? Oh, she went here. More pamphlet. So Lisa, the program coordinator in our community development department, and we also have our fire chief, Clint Belk. So please, any questions regarding even beyond today or anything about any city matter, please feel free to approach any of the city staff here. We only charge a nickel for every question that you ask. Just kidding, we don't charge anything. We appreciate everything that everybody does. So we will go through the presentations. We will then have quite a bit of time for questions and answers. There is a handout in the back that I believe most of you do have. Please sign in if you did not. Also, if you would like to leave any comments, any questions, comments, there are some comment cards in the back. I will put more of these in the back. If you, for some reason, don't want to ask a question today or want to discuss in greater detail, maybe privately, etc., or maybe a little bit shy but I don't think anybody here is shy, so don't worry. We have to worry about that. But please fill these out if you would like. That is another option. Of course, you can always text, email, call. We are here for all of you. So I will turn it over. Thank you. I forgot the bathrooms there are 2 sets of bathrooms behind to my right here through the lobby. There's a set of restrooms, and also down the hallway, out the doors to your left, down the hallway are a set of bathrooms as well. And I will turn it over to Linda. Thank you.
Can you hear me like this? How about now? Better. I'll try to talk loud. Okay, let me try this one. All right. Good morning. It is very nice to be here. My name is Linda Fisher, and I'm with an agency called Forward Pinellas. Is this better? Okay. All right. Again, it's nice to be here. My name is Linda Fisher, and I am with an agency called Forward Pinellas. We are a countywide agency that does planning for land use and transportation. We have a regulatory role over land use, and we also have what's called a countywide plan, which coordinates land use countywide. I think I need to hold it closer here. Okay. Okay, so we also offer technical assistance to local governments to help make sure that they are consistent with the countywide plan, and that's why the city has invited me to join this workshop today. So why does Forward Pinellas exist? Why do we get to have a say in what cities like yours do with their land use? And what does that mean for Madera Beach? Well, to answer that, we have to talk a little bit about the history of Pinellas County. Over the last century, as Pinellas County was settled, it started as a collection of scattered towns and small cities. A lot of them were centered on the citrus industry and followed the railroad line, and there were large expanses of undeveloped agricultural land between them. But those towns grew over time. We're a small county surrounded by water on 3 sides, and there's only so much room to spread out. And eventually, all those communities grew together. Today, there's almost no undeveloped land in the county, and to the average resident, it feels like one big city. But we still have 25 local governments. That includes 24 cities and towns, plus the unincorporated county. And because we're so close together, that means that land use decisions made in one community has the potential to affect all of its neighbors. And that's definitely true on the barrier islands, where you all share a single major road and a handful of bridges to the mainland. So in 1988, my agency was created to help minimize the potential for land use conflicts between local governments. Our original name was the Pinellas Planning Council. And we created a process where land use decisions made in each community would be reviewed by representatives of all the other communities. We have a board that's made up of elected officials from local governments from all over the county, just like the city council members that you elect in your city. And all the communities take turns sending their elected officials to serve on our board. And one of our seats is always dedicated for the Barrier Island communities. So right now, your representative is Mayor David Will from Redington Beach. And that process was enshrined in a special act of Florida law. Now, it's hard to coordinate land use if everyone is regulating it in a completely different way. So back in 1992, we also adopted the countywide plan. All of our local governments agreed back then to use the same set of land use categories with a common set of standards for things like density and allowable uses. You can always be more restrictive than the countywide plan, but you can't go higher than what it allows. If you want to increase the density on a particular parcel of land, you have to come through the countywide process and get approval for that. And this plan is also part of that special act. So local governments in Pinellas need to follow it just like any other part of state law. So my agency went through some changes starting in 2014. We merged with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is the county's transportation planning agency, and we became Forward Pinellas. We updated the special act, but all of the original provisions for land use are still law. We still have a countywide plan. We still do all the Pinellas Planning Council things. A year after we merged, we also reorganized the countywide plan and changed the name of some of our land use categories, but we didn't change the standards. And there has been some confusion about this, so I do want to be really clear that we didn't do anything that made any community inconsistent. If you were consistent with the countywide plan before we made those changes in 2015, you were consistent afterward. So why am I here talking about this at your city's workshop? Well, unfortunately, some decisions were made by the city about 15 years ago, 2008, by staff and officials who have long since moved on, so nobody who is here today. But some land use standards were adopted that were inconsistent with the countywide plan. There were densities that were adopted that were higher than they should have been. Staff from my agency caught the inconsistency and notified the city a few months later, but due to a miscommunication or misunderstanding, we're not entirely sure what happened, the problem was never fixed. So the city to this day has inconsistent standards in its comprehensive plan and zoning code. And those issues need to be fixed to make sure that you are in compliance with the special act. I want to commend your staff for recognizing these longstanding issues and working to fix them. They reached out to us to coordinate these efforts, and we really appreciate that. And I welcome anyone else to contact me if you'd like. I suspect most of the questions that you all might have today will be best answered by city staff, but if there's anything I can answer about the countywide plan, I'm happy to do so.
Hi, Peter Peixoto, 182 148th Street Avenue. I have a question on the inconsistencies from 2008, the densities. Is there any idea of how many properties were built in the elevated density that should have been prevented? Has there been any gap analysis done?
I'm going to defer to city staff on that one.
See, I know that Andrew, okay, we can go over it later, but I know that Andrew, our long-range planner, has done some more detailed analysis of up and down the beach. I'm not sure if I don't think that we've done a great analysis of specifically what has been built from 2008 within that area. We've really been focusing lately on the Johns Pass Village Activity Center, which also came from this inconsistency. So a lot of our efforts were focused in that area. They were. The county notified the city, and then we're not sure exactly what happened to that communication, but it's been inconsistent since then. We're all new staff up here. We're not here from '07 and '08. Okay, so now we will focus on our local land use and the specific areas that need to be addressed. So today we will only be talking about the countywide plan and then our local land use, which would be in the comprehensive plan and the code of ordinances. So I like to imagine this as a pyramid with Forward Pinellas at the very top, and they give us the standards that we can go to. We cannot have anything higher. We cannot have a higher density or intensity as what they have in our land use. So with the county, you have the countywide plan, and within that plan, you have the countywide rules, the countywide plan strategies, and then the countywide plan map. And locally, we have the Madeira Beach Comprehensive Plan. This is where you have your policies and goals for guiding the future of your city. So within that comprehensive plan, we'll mostly be focusing on the future land use element. This is where we talk about each land use, what's allowed use, the intensity and density. And then with that, we have a future land use map. And then we have the Madeira Beach Code of Ordinances. And within that ordinances, we'll really be focusing on the land development regulations. This is where you have your zoning, you have your setbacks, you have your height, you have your accessory structures, your landscape requirements, all that nitty-gritty of planning that you think of. And then we have the zoning map. So it's important to remember every single parcel has 3 designations. Those are not changing. You have a designation at the county level. You have a designation with a comprehensive plan. That's called the future land use map. And then you also have a designation with zoning. So we'll be talking about intensities and densities with every category. Density is measured by units per acre. So if your property has 10 units per acre and you have half an acre, you can get a max of 5 units. So it's a little easier to understand. We also measure with floor area ratio, or FAR. This is a little harder to imagine and visualize, so we created this basic visualization of FAR. So imagine if you have one parcel land, that green is empty, but it's your piece of land, and your FAR is 0.5, you can essentially build a 1-story building on half of that land. And this is the ratio between the parcel and the gross floor area ratio. So imagine that as enclosed, air-conditioned area. It's a little more intricate when you look into the code and the definition, but that's the best way to visualize it. So if we go to a FAR of 1.0, you can see in the middle there of this slide, say if you wanted to build on half of the land, that's going to be a 2-story enclosed building that goes out to the property lines, or a 1-story building over the entire parcel. Of course, this isn't accounting for the setbacks, for the height requirements, the landscape requirements, the parking, all of that nitty-gritty. So, but this is just an idea of what this FAR is. The county and Madeira Beach measures their intensity and density slightly different. So with the county, their non-residential strictly measures with FAR. With residential, it's units per acre or FAR if permitted by the category. Temporary lodging is units per acre or non-residential FAR or units per acre and FAR with alternative temporary lodging use standards, and this is inclusive of the garage. And we'll go into further of the alternative temporary lodging use standards and what that is. And then with the mixed use is a combination of residential and non-residential density or intensity standards allocated to the respective proportion or all-inclusive FAR. Now going to Madeira Beach. Our commercial, we measure with floor area ratio, FAR, and residential, we measure units per acre and FAR. Temporary lodging, units per acre and FAR. And the mixed use is the same as the county. So going back in history, how did we come to this inconsistency? The comprehensive plan was amended in 2007 to mirror those alternative temporary lodging provision, but the city incorrectly applied them to the entire commercial general, retail office residential, and resort facilities medium. And within this, locally, we also did not provide the by rights without using the alternative temporary lodging provision. And then in 2008, the city amended the land development regulations, that's where your zoning is, to include the alternative temporary lodging use standards, but did not provide the standards given by right, meaning if you don't use this alternative temporary lodging provision. This alternative temporary lodging use standards, I like to imagine it as a bonus. You can get to it if you go through certain things, getting a development agreement, which we'll go over in the next slide. These are the current countywide standards in the land use categories where we are inconsistent, where we adopted those alternative temporary lodging use standards, but we did not clarify how to get there. So we have the retail and services, this is with the county, and then we also have the resort. And I'll show a map later on to show you exactly where those are. So you can see just with the countywide plan map category, you can get a floor area ratio of 0.55, and then using the alternative temporary lodging use standards, you can get a FAR of 1.2. You can also see that the bonus of the temporary lodging units per acre without going that alternative temporary lodging use standards is 40. If you go that extra mile, get that bonus, and you can get 60 units per acre. You can kind of see this in the resort too, how you can get higher. So these alternative temporary lodging use standards, to use these, the standards must be included in the local comprehensive plan and land development regulations. And then to use these standards, there also must be an approved development agreement. And so these development agreements, they have to go through 2 public meetings, get public input. They're also mailed, it's a mailed notice. There's many times for public input. This is also where the city can ask for the developer, property owner, to do more than what is required, to improve landscape, to improve infrastructure. That's the development agreement process. So it's just an extra way to get public input and so that the city can ask the developer more because they're getting this bonus. So the alternative temporary lodging use standards, here are the maxes. We cannot go over these numbers. We can go less than these numbers. We cannot go over these numbers. But this is what this looks like in the countywide rules. So part 1, we will be focusing in on the countywide plan and the consistency with our comprehensive plan. And this is where you can see the 2 different maps, the countywide plan map, and then in the comprehensive plan, it's called the future land use map. So in the countywide plan map, the areas that we are inconsistent is the resort category. That's the west side of Gulf Boulevard. You can see in our comprehensive plan map, which is the future land use map, that's equivalent to our resort facilities medium. We go to the countywide plan map. The other area that we are inconsistent is the retail services. In the Madeira Beach future land use map, that's equivalent to the commercial general and residential office retail. It's mostly on the east side of Gulf Boulevard, where the resort is on the west side of Gulf Boulevard. So looking at the current standards with the countywide plan map category, you can see that our current standards are higher than what the county allows. So with the temporary, we're fine with the residential units per acre. We're under what's allowed, but with the temporary units per, lodging units per acre, you can see that we're higher. So if you go back to this map, the retail services is that red. That's on the east side of Gulf Boulevard. And then in our comprehensive plan future land use map, those colors are red and purple. The commercial general and then residential office retail is shown in purple in this map. So we try to coordinate the colors with what's on the map. Couldn't fit it all in one slide. It was too much information, but that's where these colors came from. So with the county, you have the retail and services. Their FAR is 0.55. Their temporary lodging units per acre is 40. So you can see in our commercial general and our residential office retail, we are higher than that. And that's what was adopted in 2007, 2008. And it was based on the alternative temporary lodging use standards, but they didn't clarify how to get up to 60 and what the by right without going the development agreement, what you could get, which would be a max of 40 if you look at the county. So in the resort on the west side of Gulf Boulevard, the allowed temporary lodging units per acre is 50. As you can see, locally ours scales, it depends on the lot size, but it's 45 to 75. And then same for our FAR, it also scales depending on the lot size. So looking into the comprehensive plan, you can see that in our comprehensive plan, in the land use element, is not clarify the temporary lodging density in higher FAR. It doesn't mention the development agreement, how to get to those higher standards. It does not mention that bonus provision, is what I like to imagine it, and does not provide the temporary lodging and FAR by right without using that development agreement process. So you can see that in the commercial general section, the residential office retail section, and then the resort facilities medium. They slightly touch on it, but it's not clear. So that's what we are here to do, is to clear that up, make it consistent with the county. So the solution for the comprehensive plan, we do not want to create any non-conforming properties, and we must be consistent with the countywide plan. So to be consistent, we need to clarify and reduce the temporary lodging units per acre and floor area ratio by right, clarify the development agreement requirement for that alternative temporary lodging use standards, clarify the FAR is only for commercial use, not residential or temporary lodging, clarify the FAR is only calculated for temporary lodging when using the alternative temporary lodging use standards. So this is potentially what this could look like. Of course, this has to go to Planning Commission. This has to go to BOC. This isn't the final numbers. This is just where we need to change, where we need to be consistent, and what it could look like. So all the numbers that are highlighted are the areas that need to change. So you can see in our comprehensive plan, in the commercial general, we need to reduce that FAR. We need to put in the intensity and density standards. Same for the resort category. Oh, yes. Good question.
Frank Stegmeyer, 15401 2nd Street East. What you're talking about here is trying to get consistent with the county standards.
Yes.
And I believe most of the citizens, if these numbers are going to be changed, I believe most of the citizens of this city would prefer that you move to numbers that are lower than the county standards. If you're making a change, we don't have to be consistent with the county. She said we're allowed to go to lower densities. We're not allowed to be at higher densities. And I don't know anyone that says, I wish we had more buildings, more people, more crowds in the city of Madeira Beach.
I understand. This, what we are proposing, or the potential future standards, this just takes into account of what's already written. We are trying not to change anything, just not taking away any property rights, and that's something that could be discussed, I think, better at, obviously you can bring that up, but at BOC and the Planning Commission, and that's where these changes can be made. Oh, Joe.
Hi, Peter Peixoto again, 182, 142nd. I read through the document, the 67-page document, most of it. There are required changes and recommended changes. So non-required, but which of these are required to be in compliance with Forward Pinellas, and which of these are not required, but we'd like to do them, or the recommendation is to do them?
These are required. We have to lower our density. There are recommended changes, and that would be definitions and also like just being consistent with definitions and putting in the uses. We're also making those changes on top of this. That will not change. This is the biggest change, but this is what we are required to change. We must change our density to be at the counties or lower.
Will we be discussing today anything that's in the optional category? Is this only about the required items?
We're only talking about the required, about the density and intensity and how we have to lower it, and then the alternative temporary lodging use standards.
Okay, so, and I apology for being, but there was the two sections of the cover letter it's probably from you, Linda, to Andrew, because it was divided into two sections. One were requirements, then there were some yellow highlights through the actual document that highlighted it, that said, these are where those appear. And then there were a number of the optional changes. So it's only that top, about a quarter of the document, that was included with the agenda.
So again, the numeric standards are required. Our recommended changes were things to make the comprehensive plan and zoning code consistent with each other, and just changes for clarity. So we do recommend that the city make those changes, but this is really this is the meat of it, what we're talking about today.
I want to make sure that, folks are clear on what's required and what's optional.
Right.
Because my read of it is that the optional pieces are more controversial, would have more concern. So if we're only talking about the required items, and frankly, it's going to have worst. I mean, Frank, I hate to tell you this, but it might be hold your nose and live with it. As long as we don't sweep something in, the baby out, the baby in with the bathwater on it. So just want to make sure there's a bright line between required and optional. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Yeah, so these are required. We cannot be higher than the counties, so that's what we're here to do. So part 2 Now we're going to talk about the consistency with the countywide plan, the comprehensive plan, and then really focus on those land development regulations. That's the zoning and code of ordinances. So these look very similar to the maps before. You have the countywide plan map to the left and the areas that are inconsistent. So resort and then the retail and services. So the west side of Gulf Boulevard, east side of Gulf Boulevard, and then you have up near Publix as well. And then the Madeira Beach zoning map, that encompasses our C1, C2, C3, C4. That's in the retail and services. And then looks like it's a little cut off on that slide, but it's the west side of Gulf Boulevard is the R3, which is the resort category in the countywide plan. So looking at our current standards, so you can see we are higher in the density and intensity than what the county allows. If you look at the temporary lodging units per acre, you can see that we're higher. This goes for the resort. Looks very
Recording in
similar.
progress.
Looks very similar to the comprehensive plan, what we were looking at before. And then down in the resort facilities medium, you have that same sliding scale. It depends on the land use. And also there's another factor which depends on the comprehensive future land use. So you have the future land use, which is a deciding factor, and then you also have the lot size, which is a deciding factor. But in both categories, we're over what the county allows. So very similar. We need to have a solution going forward to fix these inconsistencies. So the solution for the land development regulations, we do not want to create any non-conforming properties, and we must be consistent with the countywide plan. To be consistent, we want to clarify and reduce the temporary lodging units per acre and floor area ratio by right. We need to clarify that development agreement requirements for using the alternative temporary lodging use standards so that those numbers can stay the same. And then clarify the floor area ratio is only for commercial use, not residential, not temporary lodging. And clarify the FAR is only calculated for temporary lodging when using the alternative temporary lodging use standards. So the potential future standards for the Madeira Beach zoning districts and their categories is putting in that alternative temporary lodging use standard provision and accounting for that, and then reducing the floor area ratio to what the county allows. Same goes for the resort. It's reducing that FAR, putting in the alternative temporary lodging use standards, and reducing the temporary lodging units per acre by right. So the next steps, yes, we have a question? Oh, and the microphone.
Keep talking about the alternative temporary lodging standards.
Yes.
Exactly what are those? I mean, is it like a planned development? Does the county have a planned development type ordinance like what we have, or how does that apply?
The alternative temporary lodging standards were adopted back into the countywide plan back in 2007 because at that point in time we were seeing a wide-scale conversion of hotel units to residential, and we heard very strongly from our Barrier Island communities that there was a desire to keep those hotel properties as hotels or see them redeveloped into new hotels. So we created the alternative temporary lodging as an incentive. You really do have to go above and beyond. It's intended to incentivize like resort hotels with a lot of amenities, structured parking garages and landscaping and so forth. And then you get more hotel units per acre the larger your parcel is. So that's where that came from. A local government doesn't have to adopt those extra standards, but a lot of them have up and down the Barrier Islands, including Madeira Beach.
Thank you.
It appears from what you've been talking about on several slides that the commercial or the temporary lodging, the hotel type properties, we're going to be decreased, but under residential, Madeira Beach appears to allow less than the county allows already. So if you change it to match that, then you'd be increasing residential standards, and that'd be the opposite of what you
We're
just
not
mentioned.
touching any of the residential
Okay,
standards.
so when it says, your slides.
So this is a comprehensive
Yeah, like
plan.
here it says residential, the county says 30 per acre, and Madeira Beach only allows 18.
Yes, so we are lower than what we require.
And you're not proposing to
No,
bring
no,
those
we're
up
not.
to match the county?
We're not
Okay.
proposing to change any of those
Okay.
numbers.
Thank you.
And then we're trying to clarify that alternative temporary lodging use standards, which should have been clarified back in 2007 and 8, just to retain what we have. We're not trying to change those numbers. We're just trying to capture what properties already can do. So we're not trying to take away any property rights.
Yeah, thank you.
This slide? Okay.
Yeah, so help me understand, when it says, where it's kind of purplish, residential, office, retail, if it's residential, we have a UPA of 18, and temporary UPA is 45. So
Yes.
that's to say if I have temporary people living in my property, I can go to 45, but in my 576 square foot house, I can only go to 18? Is that correct?
Yes.
So I could build it big if other people are going to live there, but I can't build it big enough to
If
have
you
a
build
closet.
if you build
So-
it like a hotel or motel, there's definitions for temporary lodging.
Okay, so again, I can't build it to live in. The house has been there since 1946. She's lived there since 2000. I've been there for like 11 years. But I can't build the house. I can build it way bigger if I'm going to have temporary people living there, but I can't actually build it a little bit bigger to live there. Is that correct?
You needed an acre of land to have 18 residential units. If your house is on a 4,000 square foot lot, you can't put 18 residential units on that. That's what we look at units per acre.
Okay,
So
so again, can I put more house there if I'm going to have temporary residential versus actually
how much,
residential?
how big is your lot?
Not very big, small.
Then you wouldn't be able to build that. You'd need 1 acre of land to build something with 45.
Okay,
temporary
size for size doesn't really matter. The point is, if we're going to have other people living there, then we can make it bigger, however bigger that is. But if we're going to actually live there like we do, we can't have it bigger.
So
Can't have it that much bigger.
one definition we're looking to add is vacation rental use, which is for residential properties rented out as vacation rentals. Temporary lodging is supposed to be hotel, motel, condo, hotel. So renting out your residential property is different, is not temporary lodging. It would be vacation rental. So that's one of the things we are clarifying is those definitions.
Okay, so looking at the slide, it says residential, office, retail, and the numbers are 18 and 45. Whether that applies to our house or not doesn't really matter. The point is, our house is small, but if we're going to have vacation rental, we can make our house significantly bigger than if we're actually just going to live there in Madeira Beach where we choose to live.
It'd have to be like a hotel, motel, or condo hotel use. If you're renting out a residential property, it still has to meet that residential units per acre.
Okay? Again, maybe I'm not being clear. I can have a significantly bigger property if I'm going to rent it out, but if I want to live there, I've got to keep it really, really small. Yeah, well, we don't have that, that's for sure. Yeah, I got that.
It would have to be built like a hotel or motel. If you're doing nightly rentals and vacation rentals, it would be built to those residential standards instead of the temporary lodging use standards.
Okay, we don't want to rent it out.
And you would
We
have to
wanna
be
live
in that
there.
zone as well.
I'm asking about living there.
So if you're living there, then that would be the residential units per acre. That's the factor that we would go by.
Okay, not to belabor the issue, just the last point is, if we want to have a just slightly bigger home and live there, that's not okay in Madeira Beach, but if we want to rent it out to other people, then we can make it bigger.
No, that would still be classified as residential units per acre.
Okay, back to the meeting. Thanks.
Yes. Okay. Okay, perfect.
And Jerry's my neighbor. The part is that this is zoned differently than residential, medium-density residential. You're talking residential office retail, right?
Yes.
So if you're in R2,
If you're in R,
You
we're
can't do
not
any of that.
doing anything to
yeah, this is only the
R2s or
commercial
R1s.
properties up along
R-
Gulf Boulevard.
Yeah, if your property is like in that kind of peach color or yellow color, nothing's changing. Nothing's changing there.
And so if you're in that commercial residential area, like
Ye-
the magenta or the red,
Yes.
map, then if you build a hotel, you don't have to have the same amenities as if you build condos.
Yes.
They're long-term. That's
You have
the
to build
difference.
it like a hotel or a motel
Yeah.
versus if you're doing
'Cause-
vacation rentals or a condo, that's going to be your
Yeah,
residential.
I think that was the confusion a
Okay.
little bit, is that the residential neighborhoods are not part of that slide. you were
No,
showing.
no. We're only
Retail
really
office.
looking at like both sides of Gulf Boulevard.
Which would be condominium buildings or hotels. You're comparing condo buildings to hotels versus
Yes.
people's homes. Think.
And our cards are back there, so if you specifically wanted to send your address to us, we can tell you exactly what you're allowed to do in that area. So we'd be more than willing to, tell you what you can do.
Jenny, I'd just like to clarify the definition of units per acre. Is that the number of bedrooms, or what do you consider the units per acre? What's the definition, please?
I don't have the definition in front of me, but it would be like a separate rentable unit. Would be like if you're looking at like a condo that would be like its own unit. The Florida Building Code has the definition of what classifies as a unit. Oh, thank you. So residential use, a dwelling unit includes single-family, multifamily, and mobile home dwelling unit. We do not allow mobile homes in Madeira Beach. This use shall include any type of authorized by Chapter 419 Florida statutes, community residential homes, which is entitled to be treated as a residential dwelling unit. And
By the number of bedrooms, for density? I mean, you're saying
No.
18 units per acre or 40 per acre. So what do you
no,
consider?
this is its own unit. So if it has like a kitchen
So if you have a
unit,
right, so if you have a hotel or a
Yes,
condo,
if you
each
have
would
a-
have X number of bedrooms and, all right.
does that
thank
make,
you.
okay,
Well, it applies to intensity and density at the same time.
yes. Okay. Questions? What's next? Oh,
Yeah, on the flyer that was sent out on our phones, it shows like the countywide, and then it shows the proposed land, densities. And there is definitely a change in the neighborhoods, because you're saying you're only discussing the thing, but if you look, a lot of the neighborhoods were peach and yellow, and they're proposing us to change to red and peach. So they are increasing the densities on the two pictures here. Not on what was sent to the neighbors, and I think that's part of the concern.
okay.
Is what's proposed on the flyer, showing the two different densities, they do increase. It changes our neighborhood and steps it up to a higher density. And that's what I think.
I don't know.
Okay, yeah,
The email that came out, that if you click on the future versus the current, it changes color
right
on the
here.
slide. So that
It's-
gives the impression that it's actually changing.
Yeah.
On these maps up here, I mean, it's even easier. One on the left talks R2.
So the future, this might be a little confusing. What the map in the comprehensive plan is called the future land use map. And that's not changing. That's just what the map is called. It's called the future land use map. That doesn't mean that we're changing zoning or changing your land use from A to B. That's just what the map is called, and that can be a little confusing, but that's the title of that map, is the future land use map.
When I was up looking at these charts, I thought the one on the left had R2.
Yes,
R2
this is our
doesn't-
zoning map that has
Yeah,
the
that's the way
zoning
it is today.
categories.
The other two do not have R2. They have, I think, R3.
No, so you have your zoning map. So every single parcel has 3 categories on it. You're going to have your zoning that's going to look like R2, R3, C1, and then you have your Madeira Beach future land use map. Doesn't mean that we're changing this in the future. That's just what the map is called. That's the map in the comprehensive plan. That's your land use map. So in the comprehensive plan with that future land use map, you have, this is what's on the screen, the commercial general, most of the residential, like the yellow is residential urban. That correlates to the R1 zoning map, but it's its own map. It's separate.
But-
That's in the comprehensive plan. And then the
You understand that
county
when people read
has,
future land use map, that they make an assumption that it is the land use map for the future.
yes, I understand. I understand it's,
And when you look at the R3, which is a lot of that peach, the requirements, this, look, you guys have been working with this, I don't remember it all, but the densities, the FARs, everything are, I think they're quite a bit different for R3 than they are R2. So the future land use map, assuming it is the land use map of the future, means that there's a change. And I
it's,
think that's what she's driving at.
I understand that confusion, but each parcel has the 3 categories on top of it. The future land use map is just the map from the comprehensive plan. It doesn't mean that we're changing you from R1 to something else.
I am concerned about the future land use map representation of my neighborhood. Okay, so
Okay.
all I do is read the words, future, and
Yes.
it concerns me. So what we've talked about up until now, the Forward Pinellas, I'm much more comfortable with. But the future land use and the R3s and the medium densities and the things like that, number one, I don't understand them. So it's probably what you're hearing is more just, I don't understand, and maybe I would once I did. But it just feels like it's getting slipped in a little bit, to be honest with you.
Maybe we should have included our code of ordinances, because when you read through the code of ordinances, each zoning district references the future land use that it's the equivalent to. Residential medium is the equivalent to R2 zoning, and we're not touching that. The only things we are discussing is bringing the commercial and mixed, like condo, hotel properties along Gulf Boulevard and 150th that are commercial general, residential office retail, or resort facilities medium, or C1, C2, C3, C4 zoning, or R3 zoning into compliance with the countywide plan. So any of the R2 and R1 zone properties we're not touching. There's no ordinances, map changes, or anything. And even with changing the text, there's no map changes. The maps, these are all your current maps that have been adopted. These aren't changing. These maps are still staying the same. But they seem to contradict each other. They use different words. By state statute, we have to have a comprehensive plan future land use map. And the zoning map is connected to it, and future land use map's also connected to the countywide plan map. It's confusing that we have 3 maps and 3 categories for each parcel, but that's what we're required to do.
If I can just make a suggestion. I got C1, C2, R2, got it, understand it. You're putting all these new words on the legend. If maybe just behind there, you could put in parentheses that this is C1, C2, just until we get used to it, because otherwise I think you're going to end up with this kind of confusion. I see what you're talking about, Andrew. I don't see very much change between map 1 and map 2 except for the legend, well, and the colors, but as far as definitions.
Yeah, because R3 goes to plan, redevelopment, mixed use. That's 2 totally different things to me. And see, that's where
Oh, sorry.
So Town Center has that planned redevelopment mixed use future land use category and the activity center category in the county. And then for zoning, it has PD for certain properties that have been rezoned, and then C3 and C4 and R3 for properties that haven't been rezoned. We're not touching those properties. Any proposed ordinance wouldn't, the only categories we're focused on for future land use are commercial general, residential office retail, and resort facilities medium, and then the C1, C2, C3, C4 zoning district, and R3 zoning district. So it is a little confusing that there are some C3 properties that do have the underlying future land use of planned redevelopment mixed use, but we're not touching those because those have different requirements as they have a different future land use category.
I have one thing that might help people understand better, and this isn't a technical description, but it's a general. The future land use map is kind of like the state. It's the big picture, and then in each land use, there are different zoning districts. Zoning is like the details. So if you have a future land use that's commercial, they break it down into different types of commercial on the zoning. And they're not proposing to change the zoning, at least is my
That's
understanding.
correct.
They're just talking about the general categories, because they lay out in a future land use map, like this area we want to be park, this area we want to be agricultural, we want to keep this for city centers, commercial. And then they get into the details of it in the zoning map. They're not the same map. They're totally different, and they do have them next to each other, which makes you wonder, are they changing it? And it's a different thing. It's the breaking down the land uses into different categories. So it's the subset of land use. The land use is the general category, and then each zoning is a specific set of rules within that land use area. And so it looks scary when you look at it, but the zoning map is totally different thing, and it's not what they're changing. They're trying to change the land use maps. And they are talking about some specific details in the commercial and the areas they're talking about. They're talking about specific changes in the densities and things to make them concur. But the land use, the zoning map is the details within the land use map. Maybe that'll help. Because it's real confusing when you see future land use. It sounds like you're changing it. But that's the general categories that you're saying, we want to keep this for all future. We want to keep this area park, this area commercial, this area residential. Then you can divide them up, and you can change zoning. You can get your house or your commercial lot rezoned possibly to a different type of building, but you got to stay within that general land use area category. You can't say, oh, I'm going to build a commercial building in a neighborhood, because that
Yes.
wouldn't fit the residential stuff. I might have just made it complicated now, but hopefully that helped.
It is complicated and it's hard to explain, so thank you.
So, I'm getting it, but to simplify this for me, which properties specifically are going to be affected by this so-called?
Andrew can point to them. It's really on the east side and west side of Gulf Boulevard. And then 150th.
That have to come into conformity with the Pinellas?
Yes, so we're just changing the
So
text
what-
in the comprehensive
So what
plan
happened?
and the
yeah,
zoning.
So what happened if when it was formed, the county didn't take into consideration what the people wanted in the city, and they made a mistake deciding what they decided? And now something happened where folks wanted to be different than what the whole county wanted, and they omitted what the city wanted. So now the city has to change to match what the county could have made a mistake on. That's what I don't understand.
The city can change its land use if it wants to increase its densities. It just needs to come through our countywide process and go through countywide public hearings and get approval at the countywide level. That wasn't done back in 2008. The proper procedure wasn't followed, and just inconsistent densities were just adopted.
Before 2008. And in 2000 or 1992.
92.
The citizens here had an idea, but the county didn't hear it.
Okay. What we did back in
And
1992.
now the city has to say, oh, we have to meet this standard, but this standard that you all decided could have been inaccurate or incomplete. And that's the part that in the beginning is probably problematic.
What we did back in 1992 when we created the countywide plan, we did that with the cooperation of all of our 25 local governments. The countywide plan was a compilation of what everybody had adopted at the local level. So we had 36 different land use categories that we adopted, the range of densities, and we have a whole menu of options that local governments can use. At the time that we adopted the countywide plan in 1992, it reflected what Madeira Beach said they wanted to do. And it was only in 2008 that later the city changed what they were doing and they didn't go through the proper process, and that's what we're trying to fix now.
Hi, so my question is about the changes that you're talking about, lowering the densities, right? Is that going to apply to new properties that are being built? Is it going to impact any existing hotels or condos along Gulf Boulevard? I'm just wondering about that. I don't have one of those. I'm a resident, but I'm just wondering, is that, because you're talking about lowering, right, the number of
Yes.
units. Does that apply to new development? Does it apply to existing structures, or how will that play out in the future?
It would be
moving
all
forward?
new. And
Okay.
so we're also clarifying the alternative temporary lodging use standards, which were adopted, they just weren't adopted correctly. So we're just adopting that correctly, and so that people are not losing, so if the property currently is 60 units per acre, we're still allowing a way for you to still get that up to that 60 units per acre, but you just have to go and get a development agreement. And then stating what you could do with your land if you don't do that development agreement.
So projects that have already been approved by prior commissions or whatever, would those be exempt from these new rules, or would those be that those projects haven't started? Would those be impacted by these density rules you're proposing?
It would be the new projects, and
Okay, so things that have already been approved
yes,
to
and
be.
us talking internally,
Okay.
all the projects that we know of, obviously we haven't been here since 2007 or 2008. All the projects that we're aware of have gone through that development agreement process that would have been subject. So we're just trying to stop it and going through it the right way, and clarifying that process.
Yeah, because you probably are aware that there's been a lot of contention in this town about development, and so I just want to make sure that this is clear that what is going forward will remain what will be going forward, will align with
Yes.
Pinellas County, and that it will be something that there just will be applications here and there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And if somebody wants to go to that 60 units per acre or higher than what's allowed by right, they would have to go through the development agreement process, and that's a public process. And all property owners within 300 feet would be notified, and be an affected party to that development agreement. So it's a way also for more public input.
Hold up just a second. The reason you need a microphone is so that
We're recording.
when people play this meeting, they can hear everyone. So they can't hear me right now, but with the microphone.
Just a question about the marina areas. I don't see any designation on the future map where marinas are allowed. I know we already have several marinas. They're not marked on that map. They're not marked that way. What does that do for us? Can somebody have a marina on any of those that red area that we have now?
In the C4 zoning district is our marine,
So
but
anything
you
on the
can
east
see
side
that,
of the road can be a marina?
no.
So we're going by the present map, not the future
We're not
map?
changing anything of that. Marinas are in the C4 zoning district. You can see up on here, it's like that maroon color on the east side of Gulf Boulevard. And then also the property that Andrew just pointed to.
Map on the right is clearly dictating map for zoning.
Yes, that's a zoning map.
It's on the future side at this point.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question about this. Andrew's brought up several times the commercial general seems to be a new category. And on the Barrier Islands part of the town, there seems to be two areas, Johns Pass Village, which also extends out an extra block to the north, and then what might appear to be the old Bank of America site. Why is this a separate designation from the old retail? Why is the Bank of America got changed? It looks like this is all the undeveloped or potentially developed land in the future. Is there a particular reason that the Bank of America site got designated differently than everything surrounding it? Who are the developers for these sites, and why is this all done this way? It seems like this one's getting slipped in also.
Commercial general isn't a new category. That category's been in your comprehensive plan for years. The land use change that actually did happen was when Town Center was done, it changed the land uses that were commercial general to planned redevelopment mixed use on the comprehensive plan map, and they had to do a map change amendment with the county to activity center. Our commercial general category is supposed to be compatible with the county's retail and service category. And so is our residential office retail category supposed to be compatible with the county's retail and service category. There's no proposed map change amendments. What's on the maps currently is what's been approved, and we're not changing that with what proposed changes we've shown today. I know it's confusing having the three maps and seeing the categories and stuff, but we have old copies or old versions of our comprehensive plan, so the commercial general's been in there for a very long time. The Bank of America lot is zone C3 currently.
C3, so it's all red. So then what you're saying is where the daiquiri shack and all of that has been changed from red on the Madeira Beach zoning map, and now it is blue on the Madeira Beach future land use map.
I mean, that was a previous ordinance that was done before I was here related to Madeira Beach Town Center. But what we're proposing today doesn't have anything to do with that or impact that.
Do you know when those changes actually took place? Because it looks like that whole strip is completely different than map number 1 that the gentleman pointed out.
The special area plan, I believe, was adopted in '07. Is that right? Was it '06 or '07? So that big, here, let me stand up. Yes, so this right here, this is with your comprehensive plan. This is a future land use map. This blue area, this is planned redevelopment mixed use. It's an activity center. It's an activity center with the county. It's like an activity center here. These areas used to be zoned something different, or not zoned, it had a different land use. This is not zoning, this is land use. So the red, the commercial general, this Bank of America right here, Where it's red, the commercial general, there used to be more commercial general right here. But there was a land use change back in, I believe it was '07 or '08, to create this town center, the activity center that has a special area plan. And then on your zoning map, the zoning didn't change. Yes, so on this zoning map, you can see here this red, this is C3. The C3 did not change. There's an activity center designation over this area, but the zoning did not change.
Why did it change on the future land use map? It makes no sense to have one little parcel of land different than everything surrounding it unless it's for a particular reason.
It's because this was changed right here. This blue, this activity.
Nothing from the Bank of America site to the south changed?
No, that wasn't in that land use
But it's
change.
that one little piece of red seems to set off some red flags for a lot of people here.
That has not changed since the beginning. It wasn't included in the blue. I can't tell you why it wasn't, but it wasn't included in that land use change back in the day. The property owner probably didn't want it. I don't know of the exact reason why it wasn't, but it wasn't.
Joe Jorgensen, 13019 Boca Ciega Avenue. I have the county's letter to you guys with its requirements in. And it says the future land use element and some of the land use categories are inconsistent with the standards provided in the countywide rules. These inconsistencies are required to be addressed. Staff recommends including a table or matrix within the future land use element outlining each land use category, associated allowable uses, development standards, and the corresponding county plan map category for clarity. This would also help the city in identifying and addressing inconsistencies. Has that been done?
That's what we're doing currently.
You're doing it currently?
Yes, this
All
is
right.
what this meeting is.
There's so many things that have come up at this meeting today that you're working on. You know, the stuff you have to get back to the county on, to the city. I strongly ask that you have another meeting when you finished your work to go over the information that you don't have today and make it available to the public.
We will have planning commission meetings and BOC meetings. Up on the screen, you can see the potential future changes. This is to address the comments.
We're not keeping anything from anyone. We're not keeping anything. If we will have more public meetings like this to explain all of it. There is no mass conspiracy. Nobody is hiding anything. There are no bunkers. These changes occurred several years ago. We are working now to correct the inconsistencies, the issues, the problems. I will say likely controversial decisions. That's what we're going to do. That's why we're having this meeting. We will schedule more. Please feel free to continue to ask questions, send emails, text. We do not have all the answers. None of us were here back then, except I think many of you.
So when is this vote planned for? I assume this has to go before the Board of Commissioners, because I understand that there's been 2 readings already of what was posted on the Madeira Beach website. 2 readings sounds like somebody's getting ready to finalize something.
No, there have not been 2 readings. This has gone to a BOC workshop to do a presentation, to discuss the same issues. It's a very similar presentation. Same presentation also went to the Planning Commission just to let them know of the inconsistencies and that we're working on them. And then we will also bring this back to the Board of Commissioners, BOC, on their next workshop to discuss this and then bring them the potential standards, and then we can discuss on that. And from that meeting, we'll kind of go to see if there's more public meetings, if then they are ready to bring it to Planning Commission for their first, Planning Commission gives a recommendation, and from Planning Commission, it goes to BOC for first reading, and then it actually goes to the state. Since it's a comprehensive plan, that usually takes 60 days. And then after if we receive the recommendation for approval, then it goes back to BOC. So the previous meetings were only presentations and discussions. So nothing has been read. There's not been any official change to this.
Listening to the comments and frankly some of my own, I think what's missing on this is the picture on the puzzle box. I mean, everything seems like a lot of little pieces, but we don't know how they all fit together. In looking at some of the older, the master plan that was done in 2002, I mean, to find a vision for the community, pedestrian walkways, ways to engage people a little bit better, multi-use, and provided, to my eyes, some context for development and how this would all work together. And it lowered my suspicion of, well, things like the Bank of America. I mean, I got to tell you that sends off a couple little, because I don't know. But if it were done in a context, I may not need to know as long as I knew that the overall vision of the community were being guarded. In the May meeting, I think the Florida State University consultants had gone through that 2002 and found a lot of goodness in it. They kind of liked it. And I think, Robin, even you mentioned maybe doing a summary of it. I'd encourage folks to take a look at it. It's a long document, 97 pages, tight space, but it's got a lot of goodness in it. It might be time to update it as the picture on the puzzle box and the comprehensive plan then supports it and the zoning, but it gives us a vision as to where it comes from. And frankly, from there, I think we could, when people want to develop a property, we could say, this is good, but let's have you add such and such, or make the entrance into Madeira Beach a little more better. You sound like you've already thought of this.
So we're bringing that to the next BOC meeting. I would encourage everyone to attend. We are looking forward to open up a new master plan and start that process. So, and we will definitely want public input. So the next BOC workshop meeting will also be we'll be discussing this item as well as a master plan.
So speaking to that prior visioning process from 2002, this is Doreen Moore. I was a commissioner. I'm mentioned in those minutes that are attached to that ordinance that was adopted at that point in time on that visioning process. So, that's what, 23? Yeah, thank you. And Linda, and I know you were around at that time with the county, and so time has marched forward. And that visioning plan, unfortunately, there were a lot of changes in administration as time has marched on, and it was just kind of put on a shelf. And some of our administrative staff back then didn't even know it existed, and sometimes it was convenient to not look at it, and that's not a conspiracy theory, but I'm glad to see that it was brought back out, and you take the parts of it that are reasonable and usable. I'll give you one example of things. When you're visioning, the University of South Florida, we had James Moore and his team. We had Andreas Dewani. Some of you may have recognized that name in terms of he developed Seaside and Rosemary Beach and all those others out of Miami. Dewani Zeiderbach, his wife, was an architect as well. So all of those ideas were not a good fit for our city in each individual circumstance. One of the things that they looked at was Johns Pass Village. There was a discussion at that time about replacing the Johns Pass Bridge, which we all know happened and was needed. Had it been a fixed span bridge like Clearwater had, it would have wiped out. They strongly recommended that it not be done because there would have been no access to Johns Pass Village. It would have wiped out what was there. So you look at ideas, you take the ones that work, and you more or less kind of say, well, it was a good concept, but it didn't work. Personally, it'd have been great for me. I could have sold my office building to the roadway, and I wouldn't have existed at that point in time. But what was good for the city? There was much concern about what about this area with Madeira Beach Yacht Club, and people were up in arms. It's like, oh my God, they're going to tear down Madeira Beach Yacht Club and do away with it. Well, obviously no. So we have our public buildings, we have our right-of-ways and all the things that we have to work with. So let's go back and look at that plan, but we need a vision for the future of all these years later. And I also, to your point, Robin, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire about additional public meetings. I appreciate that we can all come to planning commission meetings. I appreciate that we can come to the commission meetings and that these things are posted and they're on the website and but people are busy. They're not going to necessarily go in and read about it on the city website. So getting this information out, Robin, your newsletters, we need some specifics and some attachments. People came into this meeting today with nothing tangible other than show up and be here, and I'm overwhelmed to see the number of people with their concerns and their questions, and would ask that this group and that to the staff, thank you for what you've done, but to do this again. Thank you.
Did we still have?
No, I think that was.
Oh, that was the
it.
last slide.
Yes,
Okay.
I was just moving back and forth. But that was all that we had.
Any other questions, comments? Oh, sorry, I walked away. Just to quickly, we did revive, or not revive, but we have begun the process, as Jenny said, of the city's master plan. Exactly what Ms. Moore said. We are in the infancy of that. When I arrived in December of 21, looked at what we had, the city's master plan it was from 2002. That's way too long of a time period to go without taking a look at it. Even though there is a comprehensive plan that is updated and reviewed, you have to have a master plan. What's your vision? What is the city going to look like 5, 10, 15, 20 years out, et cetera? So we are in that process.
I may be the only guy in the room that doesn't know the answer to this question, but what happened to Kitty Stewart Park? How did that become a parking lot for caddies?
Take that one.
Well, that happened in 2017, 16 to 17 to 18 as a planned development for the zoning. So there was an application to redevelop that piece of property, and they grabbed included in that redevelopment of that property, I believe it was a vacant parcel. There was a structure there. When I pull up the images, it was vacant for a little bit of time, but obviously there was something there before. No, I'm referring to where Caddy's is, not the park. Okay, so there was a structure eventually torn down. Application came in to redevelop that with the Kitty and Tom Stewart Park. So whatever those negotiations, discussions were made, it was decided allow the structure to be built, and it was, I believe, originally a different developer in the first go-around, then purchased, I believe, by the current owners, and they negotiated to do what is there now. That, if you read the development agreement, for some reason, the city allowed that to happen, meaning they approved it, there were meetings, but that's how it ended up. Overruled them, and then that led to other, so. Right. Okay. Well, I will tell you that that's not the case right now. I understand if you feel that way, but there are processes to do that. That's why you're sitting here in this meeting, because we do have public meetings. If you call myself or Jenny and want to discuss anything that you see out there, we are more than willing to do that 8 days a week. We work for everybody that lives in this city, about 3,800 people, maybe even less. Plus, there are businesses that are part of our city, and we get about 3 million people who visit our city. Those are our customers. It starts with residents. It begins with the residents that are here, and most of you, I believe most of you are residents, so that's where it begins. We have to, the three things that we do as a city: public safety, ensure that we live in a safe, secure city, from policing to fire protection to code protection to building standards. Second, infrastructure. We have to maintain we don't provide the water and sewer, but we have to ensure that the county is maintaining it. We have to prevent flooding, make sure we maintain stormwater, maintain all of our structures, maintain all of our parks, so infrastructure maintenance. Number three, economic development and redevelopment. Is that important to a city? Because that's a State Department of Transportation road. And I wish they could fix it sooner, but all that we've received is by August they had to order parts, and by August they will repair it. That's where we get to go. And I'll get to all of your questions. But that's what we do very quickly. If somebody approaches the city wanting to redevelop, we will listen to them. We have to follow the city codes. As long as I'm here, that's what I was hired to do. Make sure that we're following the rules, the laws, the city, county, state, federal laws. But we do have to listen to everyone. But we're listening to all of you now, and very clearly what we need to do going forward. We will make sure that we do that.
And you keep it up until the teacher calls on you, just saying. Okay, so back to the park, because my understanding is that land was donated to the people of Madeira Beach, by Tom and Kitty Stewart, for the people of Madeira Beach to enjoy a little bit of flora and fauna on the beaches. It is now a concrete parking lot. I don't know. I mean, trust me. Yeah, who made money on that? And oh, by the way, who's going to pay to return it to what Tom and Kitty Stewart had wanted for the people of Madeira Beach? Is anybody looking at planting palm trees and vines and it was such a shady spot in the city. Is anybody looking at doing that?
Can we get out of it, is what she's saying.
And yes, that is actually what we're doing. It was discussed at a recent commission meeting, and it is landscaping will be improved. We're going to work with the owner to the south to see how to better enhance landscaping on it.
I don't want to jump into this too hard. I don't want to offend anybody, but I've lived here all my life, lifetime resident, and I've seen a lot of this change from day one. And I just want to throw up, I think I'm on the city side, I really am. They're doing a great job. And you guys are kind of saying things about happened before their control or before they're around. I came in here today and I says, I really appreciate you guys doing this on a Saturday so we know what's going on. I mean, that's, again, it's good to vent, get it out of your system, but, we got to work with these guys, and they're going to work with us. And I don't mean to go this way either, but it's my own opinion. I like this city more than I did in 1955. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Robin. Bill Carnes. I was fortunate enough to be the builder of the Caddies where the park is now. I can tell you that the old park had 6 parking spots. It had a picnic table, and it had homelessness, degenerates through there. Women wouldn't walk through that park at night. It was horrible. Landscaping, it did have palm trees. It needs landscaping. The city's addressing that. What you don't realize is the owners of the property, they gave up their property, and they increased that now to have 18 parking spots versus 16. It has restroom facilities there that were never there before. Yes, the landscaping needs to be improved, and I think they're going to work on it. But I can tell you, if you want it returned back the old way, there'd be 6 parking spots. I know the Caddy's group personally, and they went ahead and purchased the convenience store across the street. They spent almost $2 million, $2 million to build a new parking lot where the convenience store was, to add additional parking. They didn't need to do it. They didn't have to do it. They did it because they're an integral part of the community here. And I get sick and tired of hearing people complain about a parking lot that was 6 spots. No one went there. Very few people ever went there. And now they can park there, and they can park across the street. The city gave private parking all along 141st there, only for residents only, to provide access to the beach. And that's what they've provided there. And I just get sick and tired of hearing about how beautiful, beautiful Kitty Stewart Park was when it wasn't. Thank you.
Well, just to really, the landscaping is what does need to be improved, and we are working on doing that. Again, we're even looking to partner with the property to the south. That building will be demolished. The first smaller house has already been demolished. The second one will be as well. We will look to see, to make it even brighter and better than before.
Could we go to the slide that shows the proposed standards for commercial general? I just want to do an example to show what a potential scenario of a 1-acre lot. So with the currently what we're proposing would be reducing the commercial general, which if we go back to the existing standards, I just wanted to show what so the existing standards are these. So we're reducing the FAR by right from 1.2 to 0.55. We're reducing the by right temporary lodging units per acre from 60, if we can go back to the proposed, thank you, from 60 to 40. So by right, we're reducing it. What matches the existing would require using those alternative temporary lodging use standards, which requires a development agreement, and that requires planning commission meetings and board of commissioners meetings and community input. So to get back to what we currently allow requires more public meetings with what we're proposing. So we want to make sure that the process is transparent, especially to be able to use those alternative temporary lodging use standards. So that's what I mean. I wanted to just at least show that by right, so what you can build without having to do is reduced from what we currently have in our comp plan, and would match what the county has with their retail and services category.
Hello, my name is Marcus. I'm one of the owners of Caddy's. First of all, I'd like to say on a Saturday morning, I'd like to thank the city staff for coming in and holding a presentation like this, because it is important for everybody to be able to know what's going on in their community and know what's going on in the city. When I purchased, myself and my partners, when we purchased the property at Caddy's, I have no idea what happened before we purchased it. I purchased a piece of property that had a development agreement with the city. I built what was allowed by the development agreement. I met with the city engineer, with the head of zoning and the city manager at the time, and we followed that document per word, and that's what we built. I didn't like the landscaping that was in Kitty Stewart Park. I wanted to add trees. I wanted to make it look better. That was what I was told to build. I'm sorry that It's not what you folks like, but that's what I was told to build. I didn't do anything that wasn't written in black and white, that wasn't agreed with between the city and the property that I bought. I spent an awful lot of money on our part of it, developing Kitty Stewart Park, developing what the Department of Transport wanted, how Kitty Stewart Park was to be built. We wanted to build a nicer restroom there, but with our floodplain, we would have had to start the ramp across the street to be able to go into the bathrooms. Part of the agreement was I paid for half, or I think it was 47,000 what the trailer was. I gave a check for 25 for the trailer, and it was the best facility that we could do under what the guidelines we were able to build and what I was told to do by the city. So there has been a lot of changes. There'll be a lot of changes in the city, but I deal with Robin and I deal with Jenny and the crew, the city staff. They do an incredible job. And you guys are really, really lucky to have this staff that cares about what you guys want, what the businesses want, what our customers coming into town want. And I just want to say you guys do a great job. Thank you.
With all due respect, Bill and Marcus, this isn't about palm trees. This is about a park that residents gave to the city and is now in the hands of a business. So I know you guys are business people, you do what you need to do, but this is about land that was part of our community and is now part of Caddy's. Functionally it is. I understand there may be some, but it's no longer a park. It is no longer a park, it's a parking lot, okay? It's not about palm trees. But the second piece this is about is accountability. And I understand you guys weren't here then, but as you mentioned, a lot of people here are. So when these issues come up, I understand you saying it was before my time, but I'm telling you the wounds are here. And just like this gentleman pointed out, the little red dot in the middle, that kind of sends off the little BS meter, because that's the type of stuff that we've grown accustomed to. So you may not have the answer, but you got the baggage, and you're going to have to deal with it. And that's what you're going to hear a little bit about on these oncoming meetings. It's not about the palm trees. It's about giving away parts of our town in meetings that were not necessarily like this, okay? So thank you, and it's all due respect to you too. I understand your business interests, really.
Hey there, Carol Hall, 115 Boca Ciega Drive. I'm just curious who pulled the permit to build that parking lot. To my understanding, there was never a permit filed to tear that park down. So can somebody talk about that, please? Maybe Robin?
It was part of a planned development. We can go back and look at the planned development and pull the permits, but there were permits that were pulled as part of the planned development. So we'll pull them up. Actually, we're going to put them on our website. Planned developments are actually already listed on the website, in case you're curious. Best thing about any website is what? The search engine. So just type in planned development and see how that goes. And if anybody has a much better suggestion for a city or a local government website, please let us know. 25 years in 4 cities, no website is good for government. Unfortunately, it just isn't. We're a small city. We do 10 different things, 10 industries. Clearwater, St. Petersburg, 20 to 25 totally different things that they do. A fire department is completely different than a recreation department. Some call it public works, some call it public utilities, some call it public services. How do you find your information? It's not easy, but search, hit the search in case you're curious to find something on the city's website. But our goal, our plan is to put obviously as much and additional information on there.
The Bank of America site's been mentioned a lot, and I just wanted to point something out that maybe people aren't getting. When the plan redevelopment was created, this before this was created, this was just commercial retail. So this didn't extend to the Bank of America property. If it had, you could build more density on the Bank of America property than you can by leaving it alone. So it looks like it's singled out, but that's only because this plan development wasn't extended that far. This was read before the plan development was created, so there's actually less density opportunity on the BOA property than there would be if this was blue like everything else. So you actually have lower density opportunity here on the BOA property than you would if they had extended the plan further to the south. So
Yeah, I think that's just visually it looks inconsistent.
Right.
I agree, but it is just a map and it can be changed at any time as well. But we hear the concerns regarding that. That's well understood.
I'd just like to clarify the permits. Young lady asked about permits for that entire project. I can tell you we had to pull FDOT permits. We had to pull city building permits. We had to pull permits for EPA. What lawsuit? I'm not familiar with any.
Are you referring to the Caddy's parking lot? The Kitty Stewart? There's a lawsuit currently?
There's not a lawsuit.
There isn't currently, that we're aware of, there is not a lawsuit. The city has not been served by any court or any individual or any company to sue for whatever is happening, but of course, I mean, I'm the one that signs if we get sued. Is anybody aware of a lawsuit of Kitty Stewart Park? Okay.
There's not. There's one
not.
gentleman around town that spreads rumor and innuendo and gossip.
Well,
And
we
it
will check
probably
to see
came
if we
from
have been
someone else,
sued.
but all the permits, which is what you were asking about, all the permits, not only from the city, but from the state of Florida and from the federal government, were all pulled. Everything was inspected and everything was approved, and that's the answer to your question. Thank you.
And just a quick question to clarify the blue map. It includes Archibald Park? So, like, the map of the blue, oh, sorry, the blue land use map or whatever that's there, it includes Archibald Memorial Park? So is that also a planned redevelopment? Just someone to clarify it, please. Thank you.
No, not a planned development. That site is protected by numerous federal requirements.
No, it's not a PD or rezone to planned development. It's within, it was designated within that activity center, the town center activity center.
It's actually marked in a light green if you get real close to the map as recreation open space. It's hard to see.
Yeah,
this is a different color than this. And the other park here, which is the one that's actually in jeopardy if anybody wants to try and sell it, this one doesn't have agreements on it. But there, even Kitty Stewart Park's shown in that light green that says recreation and open space. It's just hard to see from over there, I think.
Yeah. And to clarify, the city of Madeira Beach, the city, so all of you, all of us, still own Kitty Stewart Park. It was never conveyed to any private entity. The concern is the use of it and the fact that an adjacent business, the city agreed to the changes that occurred for the adjacent business, which in fact provides for the ingress and egress, entrance and exit to a private business. I will tell you that I don't agree with that. Why the city agreed to that? I think it violated what some of you said. Ms. Kitty Stewart, when she conveyed it to the city, to be used in perpetuity for public use. It is still a public use. However, it also allows for an exit and an entry into a private business. Is that, other than the fact that it obviously has changed, that has been communicated to me by probably 60 or so different residents. Why was that ever allowed? I agree with everybody who feels that way. That is a little bit odd, but it does happen. Madeira Beach is not the only one that has had that issue, but and so now how do you fix something like that if we look to correct it?
Now that Caddy's owns the property across the street.
I don't know if everybody heard that. Now that Caddy's owns the parking lot across the street, is there a plan to shut off their access? Excellent question. That would seem to be a solution. I understand. So that will likely be discussed and debated going forward. But yes, that could work. And right, they will have more parking across the street. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm not a big fan of more and more rules and regulations and government oversight, but since this kind of happened kind of under the rug and folks that are here weren't there and things happened in the past, right? Do we need to have like a city ordinance that says the people that live here, although the city might think, oh, this is the best thing for the city, the folks that live in the city ought to have a say in that matter. So should we vote on something that says, yes, we have an ordinance that says before we make a change like giving away, or again, you guys did good things over there, but giving away property that was given to the city for the use of the people of the city, should we have an ordinance that says the people of the city have to vote on that before that's allowed?
Possibly.
Perhaps. Just to keep it from slipping under the rug.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I mean, there were public meetings when that happened. And I understand there should have been more. And I have shared with the time that I've been here with just about every commissioner that I'm trying to recall exactly that if a planned development comes before, or the next one that comes before the city, there will be many meetings. It will not be 1, 2, 3, or 4 meetings. There will be many meetings so that nobody comes back and says, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know who are these individuals, who are the developers, what is the city doing? Is the city getting any additional infrastructure? Because a planned development it's great flexibility to redevelop a piece of property in a very small space.
On a specific piece of property.
Sure does. You're absolutely right.
So height, density,
You're absolutely
everybody's
right.
complaining about, and nobody's feels like they've been listening
and that's
to.
what I was going to say is it allows for your ordinances to not be followed.
What's the point of the ordinances if they're not going to be followed?
Well, the planned development is an ordinance that allows for a zoning change. That's what it is, but I'm not saying that it's a good thing to have. It just allows for flexibility to redevelop a piece of property. That's a fact. Obviously, it allows for other things that are clearly not popular, and not just here. Those wouldn't be popular anywhere. They're not going to be popular in any city. If a developer comes in, has $100 million, I'd like to negotiate with you. This is what we're going to do, and that's how it works. So I agree with you, but unfortunately, when it comes back, it will be a very different process.
So what's being proposed today doesn't touch the height limits in these existing zoning districts. It doesn't touch setback. It doesn't touch ISR. It just brings the densities and intensities in compliance with the county and make sure that to reach those alternative temporary lodging use standards, that it requires a development agreement, which requires the public meetings and the mailings, and the developer has to mitigate the impact of the additional density and intensity. So, I mean, the thing is, what's being proposed protects the community and meets the concerns to make sure that that new development fits within like the character and the needs of the community. So I mean, I think previous concerns of what happened under previous boards and managers and plan commissions and that we had no control of what happened previously. So right now, we're trying to fix what we currently have to make sure moving forward that we're in compliance and there's transparency. So, but I know it's tough to rebuild that trust after it's been burned, unfortunately. So, but the goal is to rebuild that trust. Sorry about the mic, but yeah, this doesn't impact the. It's just density, intensity. It doesn't impact the other things in the zoning, like height. Yeah, yes, sir.
Again, I don't know when you guys have approved what projects, but I would invite you guys as the people that are looking at the citizens that are against these red zones or whatever you want to call them, the people that live next to those properties. If you go over here on First Avenue at 154th Avenue right now, there's residential properties. Somebody approved that project over there. There was 4 small cottages. I understand the zoning probably allowed it. There is now a 40-foot concrete wall where the people in the residential single-family houses across the street look out their door at a 40-foot concrete wall. I invite all y'all to go over there and look what was done on First Avenue adjacent to the golf course over in that direction, and look at that project and somehow explain to me how that project serves the other citizens of this county. It's just appalling, of this city. It's appalling.
I just wanted to go back and make a comment following up to what Robin was saying about plan development. Those agreements, do, as you said, that they can make changes to our existing ordinance. I just simply would like to say that with plan development, that does give the opportunity to make adjustments, but there also should be a size restriction, so that if you have the opportunity on a parcel that's large enough to make flexible changes and work with the city and working with the planning commission and so forth, that's great. But what we've seen in the past is that there have been very, very small parcels of land that have been adapted through the use of a PD that just basically threw everything out in terms of setbacks and easements and requirements and even height. So I just recommend that when we're doing this, that we look at those as part of, I know we've gotten down in the weeds here, but that's something that would help the residents understand that we have rules and then there's some flexibility and creativity, but under defined circumstances.
Yeah. At the next upcoming BOC workshop meeting, we'll be discussing just short presentation and short memo about the previous master plan, because I think it's important to look back at it. There was also a corresponding ordinance that did not pass related to it back then, which it's a very long document, that ordinance, but one of the reasons I don't think people realize, but the previous master plan proposed a significant increase in density than what we're proposing today. That's what I mean. What we're proposing today is more restrictive than what the master plan had in it, especially for residential. The master plan had a significant increase in residential that would have, which as shown today, we're not even touching the residential. It stays exactly the same as how it is currently. So the other thing in the master plan, height-wise, our current zoning districts are more restrictive than what was in the master plan on height for the C3 and R3 zoning districts. So that's what I mean. It's important to look back at it, because I think certain people forgot certain details about what was actually in it. So that's what I mean. I think what we've proposed today kind of meets in the middle of protecting property owners' rights to reasonably use their land while not allowing for excessive development, which I understand is a concern. So it's tough to find a middle ground, and I think what we've proposed today, it's not perfect. Not everyone's going to be, but it meets in that kind of middle ground of not too much, but not too little either, because you kind of have to balance both.
My name is Ron Loggett. I've been here, property owner since 1981. Have attended numerous commission meetings, planning commission meetings, and I appreciate what Robin is doing over here. I think it's very, very positive. Some of it is the fact that a lot of us have been snake bitten before, and we're gun shy. I know that I've attended PDAs when they make the presentation recorded, and as I go back and look at the recordings, some of the things were never discussed. And if they would have been discussed, we probably would have had a lot more objections to it. I didn't attend yours, so I don't know whether the fact about the kiddie park was talked about or not, okay? But that can be looked at if it was recorded. I think you're very positive in what you're doing over here, Robin. I've attended commission meetings before and also some of the planning commissions, and I could tell from the body language that the mind had been made up already as to what they were going to do. And yeah, we were going through the process of talking to the citizens, talking to them, see what they wanted, but at the end, it was done. And I've seen before where after the PDA has been approved, changes have been made that were not discussed. And I would hope to see that that would change. But I think this has been very positive. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Tom Edwards, I'm a longtime resident too. I've had property here since 1978. So you keep alluding to C3 and building heights, Andrew. And so in here it talks about the maximum building height is 34 feet, and then if it's a multifamily church dwelling, it's maximum 44 feet. But my understanding is that it's actually taller than that from what our discussion is. So if you have a flood level of 3, and then you've got board feet above that, so is it 44 feet above the flood level and the board feet? Is that correct?
We measure from base flood elevation plus 4 feet of freeboard.
Right.
The reason why we measure like that, because with the newer development, we want to make sure that they're well out of the floodplain, and as we've seen in other the Hurricane Ian, for example, wave action is very rough, so it's important that especially with newer development, that's well off the ground. And
But again, as you read the ordinance, it specifically says maximum building height is 34 feet or 44 feet, depending upon which it is. So it's not real clear. You know, it gives a false impression of how tall buildings are going to be when you start, especially when you're doing plan developments and things like that. So, you know, this is something you all need to look at. And talking about plan developments, we've had this discussion also. You're only notifying people within 300 feet. You know, we're having meetings like this. We should have had several meetings like this when you were discussing the activity center in Johns Pass. We should have had multiple meetings, and we didn't. You had your public meetings and stuff, but you didn't have where we can come to a meeting like this and ask questions. And like with the Schooner project, that issue came up, and we've talked to you all about that too. You know, you're only notifying 300 feet, but that was important because you're trying to say, like, being a planned development, and you had no criteria as to how far up the beach, because you can only affect a certain area around you, but you were going up the beach further, saying, well, these buildings down here are 12 stories tall, or these buildings going this way. You don't have any criteria to say, well, we can only look at going 500 feet or 300 feet. And you have no requirements for your planned development as to how far you can go with assessing how high buildings can go in surrounding areas. I also would recommend that you go ahead and any proposed planned developments coming up, you should be putting them on your website so the public can go there and look to see what future developments are going to be occurring, and so that they can give input concerning that and also appear at the meetings. Thank you very much.
The Board of Commissioners would have to pass an ordinance to expand the mailing distance. So if the board is interested in doing that, I mean, we're happy to have an ordinance to do that. It would really be up to them to decide on that if they want to increase the mailing distance from the 300 feet. Recently, we did increase the mailing distance for development agreements from 200 to 300 feet. So, I mean, that could be changed in ordinance. What we're proposing today doesn't touch planned developments, which is rezoning. That goes back to if the Board of Commissioners want to change the planned development ordinance and allow or add height limits or change how they look at height, that would be up to them to at a BOC workshop to decide that need to do an ordinance for that. In the master plan, the height limits that were proposed were on the R3 zone properties. Potentially, you could get up in the master plan would have been up to 6 stories, 1-story commercial or parking at grade, 5 stories above that on the beach side on the R3 zone. So currently we're a little more restricted than that, but we have had to we've added more freeboard as the deal with wave action from storm surges. So, but it really comes down to the Board of Commissioners vote on this stuff and they pass the ordinances. So if they want to add a height limit in the PD, that's going to be up to them to decide on that.
Just a couple of quick things. I forgot our vice mayor joined us at the meeting. Ray Kerr is here as well. So the only one who did not attend, Commissioner Tagliarini, is on vacation, as I said earlier. Again, thank you, all of you, for coming out. Appreciate you coming out on Saturday. All of you are also invited to come back in 3 weeks, July 8th, and we'll touch on this. It's not a meeting specific to this. We will look to schedule one probably shortly after that. But July 8th here, which is a Saturday, we'll have a breakfast with the city manager and come back and bring any and all comments back, and we'll provide updates with this as well as a few other projects, including, looks like Monday, that's what we were notified by our contractor, that on Gulf Lane, the undergrounding, the preliminary work to begin to underground utilities on Gulf Lane is scheduled to begin Monday. So residents on Gulf Lane should have been notified. Our contractor explained that that's what they were doing, but we found out that that was not completely the case. We issued information through our media, so in the future, we will make those announcements and those phone calls to all residents, but the impact should be very, very minimal, and you'll be notified if everybody will still have access to do that. The undergrounding is on Gulf Lane, has been, as well as on Gulf Boulevard when that begins. We have been waiting and waiting for months and months, almost a year, from Duke Energy to really, because they're the ones that have to work with our contractor to begin that process, where you have to actually begin to bore underground, put the actual piping or the conduit under the ground to eventually place all the electrical utility lines through that conduit. So it's very, very early, but at least it is about to begin. So that's the good news and the bad news, because nobody likes to have construction directly in front of their house, except I think I do. I don't mind it. So any other questions? Again, we greatly appreciate all of you coming out on a Saturday. Thank you. Thank you. That means that you truly do care about where you live. I care about where I live. This is where I live until such time as I'm told no. And so hopefully that happens later rather than sooner, but this is my community as well. All of our city staff are here to make sure that we do the very best that we can, provide the most efficient, effective services, from special events to recreation to transportation, whatever we can do to fire, rescue, all of that, maintaining our streets, all of our infrastructure. So please let us know anything needing attention. We are not everywhere all the time, although some people tell me that they do. What were you doing behind business, et cetera, at 1 in the morning? So that's a true story. So I think you had a question.
Thank you. Great presentation today. I really appreciate learning so much about this. And then two quick questions. The presentations we saw today, will that be on the website for us to?
Yeah, it's actually on YouTube. If you just go to YouTube, type in City of Madeira Beach, it'll bring you up nearly every single meeting held in this room by the city, whether it's a commission workshop, planning commission meeting, civil service commission meeting, or this meeting today.
Awesome, good to know.
And that's why I didn't mean to interrupt you again, but that's why we're encouraging everybody to use the microphone, because anybody who listens to it, watches it in the future, then they can very clearly hear what is being stated, commented.
Certainly makes sense. Are the presentation decks that you use, are they published on the website somewhere?
Yeah, these presentations are on the website.
Okay, great. And my last question is, how do I get connected to receive the communications you were talking about?
If you go to our website, on the homepage all the way down to the bottom, you have the opportunity, it's Engage. You can sign up to get all of our emails that we send out. We have over 5,000 email addresses, and we send out information pretty regularly about special events, road projects, these types of meetings. So I encourage everybody to sign up for the cities, to put your email address so that you receive all the updates, news, information. And again, you can always call, text, stop by in person. We are open 8 to 4:30. We even stop by, take a look at the city store, buy some city shirts, hats, etc. Show Madeira Beach pride. Any other questions? We'll be here if you have anything else. But thank you all again for coming out, and thank you to the staff. Oh, and please take some donuts with you and some coffee.